So the topic we have today doesn't really reflect. The topic on the sheet is world is an idea, not a jungle. The Rebbe actually uses the term jungle. Jungle in Hebrew is Ish kol hayasher be'einav yaseh. Jungle in Hebrew refers to a place where anyone can do anything without any consequence. There's no order. And really what we're doing in this class is addressing challenges of life. And this class is adapted from a mimer of the Rebbe Rashab. But in order to do that, we're going to backtrack and start from who we are to understand how we behave or how we can interact. You have to understand yourself. In order to address what we do, we have to first address who we are. So the who we are helps us deal with what we do. So therefore, the first discussion is going to be, perhaps it sounds a little bit philosophical, but it's not. It's really addressing a question that we have in life and taking the philosophical question, taking it into life. So let's start with the first point. I'm going to also mention the Hebrew words that are associated with it, the different terminology. So like this, those who come across it, you'll be able to associate it properly. In Chassidus, it's brought down. There are two names to the Eibishter. Essentially, there are two behavior patterns Hashem has. There is a behavior pattern of miracles and there's a behavior pattern of nature. There's a behavior pattern where Hashem, if you want to put it in simple terms, you can look at it the same way humans have two tendencies in the sense of relating to another person. Sometimes you're open and you allow yourself to interact, which means to say the way the person you are is now flowing to, I get you, I understand you. Why? Because I'm allowing myself to be open. The Eibishter has his moments of miracles, which are essentially moments where he allows himself to, that we should somehow get him. Moments in history, moments in life, moments in collective history, and moments in the personal history of a person. But those are moments, times of the year, times of a person's life, whether it's Yom Kippur, whether it's a personal experience, whatever it may be, miracles. And then we have nature, which is the life we live. Nature is a place where he is not felt, and that's the life where we are. That's the encounters that we have on a day-to-day basis is nature, is teva. We say in English, the real world. Whenever a person gets too caught up, we say, welcome to the real world, right? What's the real world? The real world is not the world of miracles. The real world is the world of nature. That's our world. That's not where we're supposed to be. That's where we are. Okay? That's the real world. The question we all have, and the question that Chassidus deals with, is how do we merge the two worlds? How does Hashem expect us in our real world to get Him in a real way? It doesn't seem possible. There seems to be a real contradiction here. And actually, it seems to be His fault, not our fault. It seems to be His fault. I'll tell you, it's very simple. Imagine you sit at the Shabbos table, this happens many times, and you're sitting across someone who's simply reserved and doesn't want to talk to you. Is it my fault that they're not opening up and allowing themselves to be seen and expressed it's there? I can't do anything. I can try, I can warm them up, but if they made a decision not to have and not to engage, that's their decision they made. I can't do anything about it. Hashem made that decision. He created a world. Essentially, that's the question Chassidus asks. He created a world. And He created it in a way that He doesn't want to engage. He's not engaging in a conscious way. He's not engaging in a way that I get Him. He actually put me in a different world, and in my consciousness, I feel like I'm in a different world. The reality that I have and the reality that He wants, two different realities. So what do you want from me? This is a question that's philosophical. I'm not going to get into the philosophical area of it. Shemus and Kabbalah and whatever it may be. But it's practical. because with the lingo we use in life is my world. Think about this. When you say the word grounded, when you say the word reality, when you say the word practical, are you referring to what? Our world. So he put us in a different world. How does he expect us to use the word practical, grounded, and reality in regards to Torah and mitzvahs? It's supposed to be real. It's supposed to be real. It's not supposed to be something we do. It's not supposed to be a behavior pattern. It's supposed to be real. How? That's the question that we have. And that's a question that's brought down many times. So that's number one. This is number one on your sheet. Number one is the question that we have, perhaps in a philosophical way, but it's a question that's practical, personal. It's a question that we ask ourselves in many ways every day. And the question comes up in life. When real things hit us that are very personal is when we really ask the question. It's easy to say, to do something that's not so personal. It doesn't demand something personal from you. It doesn't intrude into your personal life. The moment what he wants is intrusive in my personal life, that's the moment I feel repulsive. And that's the moment I suddenly say, hey, wait a second. You're not real. This is not practical. This is not grounded. This doesn't make... That's the moment where it gets difficult. And that's the question we have in Chassidus. In the terminologies of Chassidus, it's Hashem Elokim. In the terminologies of Chassidus, the idea is Das. There are many different words used for this, but that's the question we have. So that's what I put out number one. Number one, you have the two names of Hashem.
Just clarify one thing. You said Hashem doesn't want to open up to us.
He created nature, and he created he created a vacuum. He created a place where we don't feel him. Bottom line, we have a different reality.
Yeah, but when you said that he doesn't want to open up, is it that he doesn't want to open up, or does he want us to reach up to him? And then
So,
open up?
in order for me to understand his motives, the first thing I'm doing is looking at the consequences. The life I live, the person I am, I have to be honest. I am not a person with living with the reality that he wants. So how do these two things merge? That's the reality. We have to be honest. We have to start from an honest, grounded standpoint. So I'd like to start with the mashal. An example brought down just to highlight the gap that exists between us and Hashem. You ever meet someone and you say, "What's the weather?" It's probably a very good friend that you have a lot what to talk about that's simply limited to the weather. It's probably someone who you know very well and you have a lot in common, and that's why you talk about the weather, right? The Eibishter and us are like those two friends meeting, and the first thing you say is, "What's the weather?" There's no common ground. The gap is so big. I simply have no common ground. If you really think about it, honestly think about it, it doesn't begin. The whole thing doesn't begin. Even I mentioned this before, we use the word a high Dargah. Many times we come across it, that's a high Dargah, and I don't like that. It's many times brought down not to say that. You know why? When you say the word high Dargah, you're essentially saying it's not possible. They say the difference between a sipur of a tzaddik and a sipur of a chassid, sipur of a tzaddik is a high Dargah. We know it's not shayach. Sipur of a chassid, we're very much afraid of it, because that means it's shayach. Now we don't want to hear something that's shayach. Shayach means to say it's relevant. It's able to come down.
We can relate to it.
What kind of chassid?
Generally speaking, the difference between the story of a chassid or the story of a tzaddik, we feel is that it's a high dargah. It's something that very few attain. We can aspire to it in the sense of a whole life aspiring to it, but not in the sense of attaining it. The moment we hear our friend achieve something, that's the moment we suddenly, hey, that's relevant. That's actually something I can practically aspire to. So the question is, how do we make this practical? The word practical, grounded, is the key word. Another example brought down to highlight the difference between what it means, what it means that the gap over here is so big. An example brought down is, imagine someone goes to Italy and they see the falling tower. You know, there's like a tower there. What is it called? The falling? Isn't that what it's called?
Tower.
Leaning tower. Leaning tower. So they come back and they explain to everybody, I saw this tower that's leaning. People gather around, and there's a person in construction in the audience. And he's a big professor in construction. He says, this guy, he's Nebach. He's going through something. It's not shaykh to have a tower that's leaning. I'm a maven in construction. And according to the way I understand, and I'm maven, I'm the number one maven, it's simply impossible. Who will he plow a doubt? Whose mind will he plow a doubt in? The audience, yeah, but the person that saw it, no. Seeing and hearing is a difference between two realities. A reality is a real thing. You can't fake a reality. A reality means it's so real that nothing can take it away from me. And that's the question we have. In English, it's called conviction too. The word conviction comes from reality. The word proud comes from reality. How do we develop a reality? How do we not develop a behavior pattern, but how do we develop a reality? In Chassidus, the term is das. How do we develop das? Conviction for something. Not a nice idea, not hearing, but seeing. Even in English, we use the word I hear or I see. I hear is like, yeah, I hear. And I see is, it's there.
See is when you have a lot of different details all together.
Seeing and hearing are both details, but it's how they play out. Seeing means it plays out in a way that it's clarity and seeing somehow connect. And hearing is also clarity, but it's a different reality.
It's removed,
However it plays out, think about those two scenarios, and one is a reality, one is there's no room for doubt. I saw it. You can tell me what you want. I saw it. Someone who's convinced, and there's someone who sees it. When you see it, it's there. The question we have is there and how is there the possibility to take something that you hear and turn it into see? Takes a reality that we live in and change. The word change is key. How do we change? What's key to changing? What is key to this idea of change? That's number two. Number two, we discussed the idea of defining the gap. In Chassidus, the lashon is Ein Aroch. The world that we live in and the Eibishter seem to be a huge gap between the two. And this is where we have to discuss how we penetrate that gap. And this is going to play out in life, so it's important to hear this part and afterwards see how this plays out in life. I gave this example in the end of one of the classes, one of the questions, they pulled this out of me, but this example belongs here. A child learning math. I don't know who was here at that point. If you look at realities, a child's world is a different world than an adult world. Why? Because there's three worlds. There's a world of touch and feel, there's a world of feelings, and there's a world of logic. Three worlds. Maisa, Midas, and Moichin. In life. Let's define those three worlds. The world of touch and feel, you go to a child. A child defines a reality if they can touch it, if they can feel it, smell it. The chushim gashmim of a person. Hear it also is a reality, shmiya. But go tell a child that a logical explanation to come to a conclusion that the reality exists. The child doesn't get it. Tell him, because I'm going to do this, therefore tomorrow this is going to happen, and therefore the next day, so therefore you should understand that 3 months from now, when that happened, it actually happened from today. The child looks at you and says, I'll go back to my toys and you can go back to your dreams, I don't know what you're talking about. A child's reality is defined by touch and feel. How do you bring the child into the world of logic? How do we merge? So let's think for a second. How do we bring a child, which his world is touch and feel, and how do we suddenly bring him to the awareness that there's a world of logic? that actually, yeah, Tati makes sense when he says 1 + 1 is 2. The Gashmis, how do we do this? Beautiful thing.
By explaining it with blocks.
So the idea is like this. Good teacher goes like this. Let's play it out. A good teacher goes to a child and tells him, you play with blocks. Your world of touch and feel. You have 1 block and 1 block. You play with a puzzle. How many pieces in the puzzle? The child was playing with the puzzle from the perspective of touch and feel. Not realizing that within his world is another layer that's actually always there, was always there, is there, and he was actually playing with it without recognizing it. What did you do to the child? Show him, look, 1 block and 1 block is 2. So you have 2 blocks. 1 apple and 1 apple is 2. So you're showing the child how his world of touch is actually within the world of logic. Now, there are 2 children. The principal comes in the room and tests the children. The principal comes and tests the children. He says, let me see, I heard this. All the children are now into the world of logic. So let me see. You guys, I have 2 bananas. 1 banana and 1 banana. How many bananas do I have? The smartest child in the class raises his hand and says, we only learned about blocks. We never learned about bananas. What's pshat? What happened here? What happened here?
It's too concrete still, he's thinking.
The child, the world of logic is within the world of the child. The child is too stuck in his world to see within his world another layer that exists there. The child is stuck. The child is stuck. Is it the smart child sees it? We'll soon differentiate what makes that differentiation. A smart child suddenly differentiates and sees, oh, I got it. I got it, and now he sees his blocks, apples, oranges, apples. He sees everything as one cohesive layer. That's another layer within the layer of. You see, oh, I see it. Now I got it. Another child is stuck. They only see this. Is the world of Seichel another world? Is it a separate world? It's a world within your world. It's like an onion. You peel it. There are many layers within everything that we engage in. There's a feeling that I have. There's a logical explanation. There's a touch and feel. Everything has everything. The question is how much I'm in touch with while I'm engaging with. But everything is everything. One child is it's a red apple. It's a green apple. It's shiny. It's not shiny. And one child is digging through and seeing there's something more. What makes the child get to that something more? What makes one child get it and what makes one child not get it?
Maybe he wants to see this.
Why does one child get stuck and one child not get stuck? Curiosity. Interest.
Maybe he trusts the teacher.
He has to trust the teacher. Yeah, that's a prerequisite. Without trusting the teacher, there is no way the child will learn. Very good. After he trusts the teacher, what's the first step the child has to do?
He wants to be like the teacher. He wants to understand like the teacher knows.
He has to ask questions.
Right.
He's not going to get out of his world if he doesn't ask questions. He doesn't get it right away. His first question is apple, orange, apple. He's going to have to ask questions. Questions are the bridge between 2 worlds. Questions, example given is like when you dig for oil, or you dig for diamonds. You have to dig away the earth that's questions are peeling away layers. We'll soon see questions are challenges. Challenges of life are questions, and they're meant to dig away layers and bring us new perspectives of life.
So it tells us that it's good to ask questions.
100% it's good to ask questions. The
The
question
better it is, the more chance.
The question is how to deal with the questions, because sometimes the questions are so tough, you feel like declaring bankruptcy instead of going further.
Some kids ask so many questions you can't even answer.
The question is how we ask questions,
How you answer
and
them.
how do you deal when questions get very tough and you feel like you want to declare bankruptcy. Do you know what I mean by you want to declare bankruptcy? You feel like there's no end to the tunnel. You feel like I trust that teacher, but maybe I stopped trusting him at this point. I don't know what he wants from me. That's where there's a moment of losing yourself before you re-identify yourself. Every time you re-identify yourself, there's a moment of losing yourself. The child is very, very frustrated in that classroom. There's a moment where he thinks, I don't know what you want from me. I sense you have something. I know you want something, but I'm very frustrated with what you want. I can't see myself getting there. That's the moment where the teacher says, just hang on. You're just there. Hang on. It's a frustrating moment that precedes an enlightening moment. What do we say? The oyer is always after the biggest choshech. That's how it is every single time. Frustration and questions are the plows we have and the tools we have. What's a question? A question is peeling away a previous way of looking at things. A question comes from a real standpoint. The child wasn't lying to you when his world was touch and feel. That was real. That's really where he is. He's in a world of touch and feel. You want him to come to a new recognition, he has to peel away. You can't come new before you let go of the old. You can't come to something because you're really the old, so you can't come to anything. So it's frustrating to peel away. The peeling away means, okay, I agree, there's got to be something else out there. Now, what is that something else? First, he's got to see there's something else. He's got to sense it. When he senses it, it's very frustrating because right now he's not there. And he feels like what he has is going to be destroyed. And he thought he already had it all. Everybody likes to think they have it all. And now suddenly there's something else. That's the moment of, it's called rotting. In another example brought down is seeds rot before they grow. Creativity, a writer's block, right? We have that in life. A writer, or any area of creativity you have that. Any area where you're creating anything new, there's going to be a moment of rotting. Relationships, you have it. Rotting. Rakuv. There's always going to be a moment of rotting. You know, Eibishter could have made that you put a seed on a table and it grows. He said you put it in the ground. You bury it. It rots. You don't even see it. It's not showing everybody. And then a beautiful plant comes out. There's a moment of rotting. If anybody tells you that they created something without a moment of rotting, they never created. Creation comes through a moment of rotting. So now let's go to this child. And now let's see how this mashal expresses itself in the same idea with the Eibishter and the Welt. So let's review. What's this mashal trying to bring out? The mashal is trying to bring out the three stages. You have the world of the teacher, the world of the student, and we're trying to merge the two worlds. And we're trying to ask, what's that key factor? What's the bridge that bridges the world of the teacher and the world of the student? What's that bridge that's going to make the student into a teacher? When does that happen?
The student into a teacher?
The student can become exactly like the teacher. Yeah, that's eventually the mission of this teacher is not to stay teacher, but to infuse the student with the student should become the teacher. That's eventually the mission of the teacher. How does that happen? The bridge is questions, rotting, frustration. All that is the bridge between old and new. The old self and new self, the bridge is questions, the bridge is rotting, and the bridge is the frustration. There are two students. There are some students that give up at the moment of frustration and they stay with the apples and oranges. Some students continue on and pierce through the layer of the apples and oranges and suddenly see something new. This is all an example. Let's see how this plays out in life. The same idea with the Eibishter and the world. The Eibishter created a world. You know, we use the term physical world and spiritual world. It's about time we put this in context. People translate the word world as if Dargah, like that, whether there's someone else that has another way of seeing things that's outside of me. No. It's the same way logical and physical. It's within your world. You have the ability to see the same thing in another way. I like saying this and I'm going to say this again. If we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. It's not a different world. It's your world. Your mind can take the same thing in another way. So, physical world, really physical, Gashmi is touch and feel. Ruchni is idea. Ruchni means purpose. Ruchni means there's something more to the things we encounter than the way they feel and smell. There's a purpose to them too. Just like the child, there's something more to the block than the smell and the shininess and the feel. There's a purpose in the sense of logic. There's a deeper purpose in every area of creation, deeper than what we initially superficially encounter. It's here, not there, it's here. And many of us can look, and we'll see how this plays out. And this is factually in life. We can sometimes penetrate and look back and say, I see why that happened, or I understand, whatever. It wasn't just shiny apples. It wasn't, sometimes we see this, but here's the flow. That's the flow that we're looking to get to. I want to play it on two ways. The Chassidus is brought out in two ways. Let's first play it out in a not such a personal way, the bigger world, nature, and then we'll play it out in life. I call it soft. In the nature of the big world, if you look at the big world out there, nature, I mean to say nature in the sense of not nature of human, but nature of the world. The sun, there's an idea of, there's a nature of how Hashem created the world, how things run. Look at technology. Let's look at technology, and let's take it and see how technology, simply the physics of the world, is a fascinating area where the deeper we look into it, the more we see there's a design and purpose. It's actually a teacher. Chassidus explains nature is a teacher. Just like the mashal that I gave of the apples and the oranges is the teacher of the student. It helps the student bridge between the world of touch and feel when the teacher is giving the student the apples and the oranges. He's not just saying stories of apples and oranges. He's actually engaging the student in an academic experience of bringing the student to the world of logic, right? He's not just telling stories. Some students think, oh, the teacher is just being a storyteller. No, he's not being a storyteller. He's trying to engage you within your world and trying to expose you to another reality within your world that you should get it. Nature is the same thing. Nature is not a story. Nature is a purpose. And it's a teacher. There's such depths within nature that they actually bring us closer and help us get to the teacher rather than obstruct us from the teacher. Nature is simply like a mashal. Let's take one area, technology, because this is an area where it plays out in a visual way. Someone would tell you 20 years ago, we'll start with the easier ones, we'll go to the other. Someone would tell you 20 years ago that I can be here and I can see you over there, right? You would probably institutionalize him. I mean, he's one of those kind of people. There's a special floor in the hospital for these kinds of people.
I remember when it was in the 1980s, I was at my aunt's home, and on the radio they said there's going to be a day where in every single home there's going to be a computer. And it seems so far out.
Before we get to computer, what about the idea that they're snooping? What are they called? The NSA being able to know exactly the prati is, or how Google knows every single person, their behavior patterns, and they give you an ad based on what you know. They know more about you than anybody else knows about you. What about technology in the sense of how specific they can give you to read what you want to read because they know who you are, and suddenly we have this whole idea of within the world we live in of how, and I can be here and see there, and he can be there, and he can control my life, and suddenly we have a different way we see the same things we live in.
And by the way, they say if you have a camera on your computer, that you should close it, because if they have an ability to get into your computer, they can actually see through the camera.
Whatever the specifics.
Really serious, I read that.
Yeah, whatever. But whatever. I don't want to get carried away. I just want to bring out a point. The point that I'm bringing out is the Rebbe used to always be at. There used to always be a question: Amuna, Mada. So used to be a question always asked: Amuna versus Mada versus science. The Rebbe would always say something, and he wasn't just being a salesman. He would say something because this is true. If you dissect it properly, this is how it plays out. The deeper a person appreciates nature, the deeper they come to purpose. the student with the apples and oranges, the deeper you appreciate, you go into what is going on in the classroom, the lessons of the apple, oranges, the apple, the deeper you come to the purpose behind it. It's not vice versa. The only time it's not vice versa is if the scientist doesn't actually, is not in, those scientists who find status contradictions in nature is because they already decided it's a contradiction before they engaged in any kind of activity of nature. It's like many times we have a predetermined outcome. It's like a Russian court, a predetermined outcome before we go into trial. It's not that the world has made me come to the conclusion that it's the scientist that doesn't want to have that kind of conclusion. So therefore, when he engages with it, you have that same thing. You see that. I can speak to one physicist, and he's going to say that there's no Eibishter. Other physicist is going to say, he's going to go into the physicists, the ones that deal with the world. They deal with the specifics, and the more you're amazed at the specifics, and the more you see, and the more you explore, it only brings you closer to purpose. That's a general area. Let's say technology. There's actually specific areas. I just gave an example of planting. You ever think about why Hashem created planting that way? He created it so we should have, in our reality, an example, a metaphor of the moments that we wrought. That's why he created planting that way. We had a whole class in Ava and Yira, in human nature. He created human nature with Ahava and Yira. Why? Because his relationship with us is the same way. The nature he ingrained in the world is like software and hardware. The software of the world is the same software he uses. It's simply his language, but a different hardware. Just like you have an iPad and a computer, it's the same software, just a bigger, smaller, whatever. It's the same software. The deeper a person understands human nature or the general nature, the more they have metaphors and the more they have simply the same communication. It's the same idea behind it. Rotting was an example. Avanita was an example. So we have this in many areas. In other words, the world is like a mashal. The world, the world in the bigger world and in the personal world as in human nature. They are all there. The deeper a person appreciates it, the closer they come, and not the further they come from a relationship with the Eibishter. The more real we are, the more real we are. It's not two different worlds. And let's see how this plays out. He created it in a way that it should be real. Perhaps moments of reality, as we'll see, not full reality. But if you look in the nature, you'll see it. You see specific areas. It's a fascinating thing. The area of rotting was always something that I was fascinated by. They usually created a world that you have to rot before you go something. That's an amazing lesson for a person in the rotting moments, challenges. That's where we're going to get to. A seed has to rot. Creativity has to rot. Every area in life that I said before, when a person has a writer's block, any area of new, anything creation means new, not a continuation. Creation is an art. It's new. Anything new is a moment of rotting. There's a moment of frustration. There's a moment of losing. You don't know where you're going. It has to be there. And that is the personal challenges a person gives. A yid is going to be on the same level. Let me first summarize this first point before we go into the challenges part. Yeah.
I just wondered if it's a parallel to that in, like, just before you're at the bottom of just surrender or bittul, be just letting go.
So bittul in Chassidus is the moment of frustration.
Okay.
A person has to allow themselves to go through a moment of frustration to get to a moment of realization.
Right.
But if a person doesn't allow themselves, they don't get it. What's the difference between Aristotle? I gave this example back then. Aristotle was a smart man. Why didn't he get it? Why was he caught doing something that was inappropriate? Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a doctor who smokes? Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? That comes from not allowing themselves to enter a new realization. Usually it's called the not me syndrome. Everything but me. Mm-hmm. It's true, but I'm different. There's a 1%. There's a 1% of society. There's 99% of society. when a person, the moment of frustration is a moment where a person loses themselves. Usually there has to be a moment of rotting before they realize, I'm also part of that. And everybody has that moment of a realization. The moment of realization is a moment where you allow something new to come in. It's a difficult moment. Difficult moments are moments of realization. Realization is a word that we use too often. Realization comes after difficulty.
What do you mean by realization?
It's the same as a tzaddik falls 7 times. Tzaddik also has to rest before he can go up.
What does it mean by realization? I'll give you there's a nice little anecdote. Molgavin Aparetz. Aparetz. And he had a yidala. And he put the yidala, he used to have a game. They put the yidala into a deer skin.
Beer skin.
Huh?
Beer.
No, this one was a deer.
Oh, a deer.
There's different parts. Different parts.
That's a kosher one. This one's a kosher
He
one.
takes the yidala and he throws him to the lions. Throws him to the lions. It was a sport. The yidala is coming down into the lion. He screams out, Shema Yisrael. And the lion hears and the lion answers back, Baruch Shem Kvei Machusu. What's the idea behind it? Moments of Shema Yisrael awaken the Baruch Shem. Moments of frustration awaken something new in us. It doesn't have to be extreme like deer into a lion. I'm just bringing it out with an anecdote. Anytime a person looks back at something, it's usually those kind of moments where we stripped the last part of the way we saw something until now. We realize it doesn't work, then you can see something else that works. You know, when someone sticks to their guns and they say this works and they're not going to let go, nothing is going to, you can't help them see something new. But if someone says, okay, now tell me, that's the moment they're going to suddenly see. So it takes a while for someone to say, okay, that's a moment of frustration. And that's what we call, I gave you the example then of the NPR. There's 2 people that remember the example? So there was a reporter. See, there's new faces, so I mentioned the example again. There was a reporter who came and interviewed a fellow who was a principal in a black school. And he was a principal there for 10 years. So he interviewed and says, I see you're a principal there for 10 years. How are you Matzliach? So he gives him a whole thing. He has a passion for teaching, etc., etc. At one point he mentioned that if not for me, these kids would be going out in the street and looting your city. So, you should be happy that I'm a principal here. So the next day, he didn't mention it in a derogatory way. He mentioned it in a way, because he's a teacher. So the headline in the paper the next day was, white principal says the black kids are going to loot the city. That was the title of the article the next day. That reporter is a very good example of the scientist who doesn't see God in the world. You don't want to see, so you don't see. When you don't want to see, you'll never see anything. There's an ability of wanting that suppresses anything from happening. When you want, you could. When you don't want, nothing could make it happen. Otherwise, the reality is in front of you. It's how you see and perceive that reality, how you want to perceive and see that reality. It has nothing to do with the reality itself. It has to do with the perception of the person seeing it. That's what I mean by a moment of... That guy has to have some kind of, a brick has to fall on his head until he suddenly sees things differently. I don't know, something's going to happen to that guy for him to say, I'm just exaggerating.
It's the same thing with the Geula.
The Geula...
People don't seem to have a handle on how it's going to practically play out. And they just think of it as some kind of ethereal thing.
So when Mashiach comes, there's not going to be any change in the physical world. There's going to be a change in my mind. Exactly the same thing. A change in my mind. When you change the way you see, that's the things you look at change to.
And then it also changes what you do.
When you have a different perception, then you behave differently, and even in business. Let's go now to the practical part. So we finished the first part. The first part is more the introduction, right? So we discussed Again, we discussed the idea. First, we started off with the question: there's two realities. Then we went into an example of the apples and the oranges of nature. We went into an example of math. Logic is within the world of touch, and the challenges, the questions, the frustration of the student. That's the moment the student can suddenly penetrate. Now, how does this play out in life? So the Mimer gives an example. Gives an example of Avram Avinu, but really there are two phases here. Avram Avinu, he was thrown in the fire. Ur caused him. He didn't know the fire is not going to burn him. Now let's think a second of what he was facing. He was given a mandate to spread Hashem, awareness of Hashem into the world. He was also promised that his child is going to continue that mandate. A fire is going to burn that mandate. The fire will extinguish his mission. The fire is a direct contradiction to the promise and mission that he was given. How did Avram face moments of those contradictions? What did he do? What was going through his mind? What was going through his mind? So it's explained, he didn't think that the fire won't burn. In English it's called perseverance. Perseverance is pushing, which is there's no thinking. There's simply a mode of pushing through because it has to happen. How? I don't know. I'm now in the mode of pushing. Pushing means it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It can't, there's no way it makes sense. A moment of frustration doesn't make sense. A moment of frustration is frustrating. A moment of frustration is frustrating. He's not going to convince himself, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand, but I push. Why? Because there's a purpose, and somehow the purpose is going to come out. I don't know how. The purpose will have to come out. I don't know how.
When you say frustrating, you mean pain?
In his sense, it was pain. In our sense, it could be mentally pain. Let me give an example of mental pain. There are two people that go to work. Let me give an example in life. Two people that go to work. I don't know if I mentioned this example. It could be in the end we talked about it. Some people go to work, and I'm going to give an example in the male area. Some people go to work with a yarmulke, right? Some people go to work without a yarmulke. Where does it come from? It comes from a contradiction of realities. Conflicting realities. It comes from my identity won't allow me to be successful. So the world I live in is not wired to allow my identity to come. I have to hide it. Ish beveisoi, there's a line, a Jew in the home and a Jew in the street.
Right.
What's there's a line.
A
A man in the street and a Jew at home, right? There's the two realities. This is what I got to do. Here's what I got to do over there. And why? In the same law firm, you can find one person who wears a yarmulke and doesn't see it as a conflicting reality. In the same law firm, you have another guy in the next room. I'm going to simply not be successful. It's a difference in the mindset. Really, it's the NPR the NPR reporter is the first obstruction to any reality.
What's NPR?
The example I gave with the reporter with the white and the black, I like that example, and the contrast of that is a story. Contrast that with the story of Glitzenstein with the Rebbe, of how a person could take an idea and allow it to penetrate behavior versus a person who doesn't allow the idea to penetrate. There's a story with Glitzenstein that there was an intellectual in Eretz Yisrael. And the intellectual wanted to make a report on Chabad. There was I don't know what I mentioned in the end. This belongs here. And so he asked Glitzenstein to go through. He didn't just make a report. He did not on the activities. He wanted to make a report on the Shita of Chabad. He wrote 2 books on Achdus Hashem. He's a secular intellectual. I don't know. It's on the Gem videos. They have a interview with him. I don't know what his name was. He was some kind of writer in Israel, and he was intrigued. He wanted to write about Chabad, but not the Shita of Chabad. He took by Morim. He went through them. He was a genius, and he wrote for 6 months. The Rebbe told him, give him whatever svarim he wants. Give him sparring. Took a mimer, he went through it. The Rebbe told the Hero to Glitzenstein not to tell him to put on tefillin, not to engage with him with anything of Torah mitzvahs. Leave the guy alone. 6 months down the line, I don't know the exact amount of time. You can look at the video and you'll see it was a meshach zman. It wasn't like a few weeks. It was like months. He calls Glitzenstein. Give me a siddur. He wants a siddur. Gave him a siddur. Eventually, he started putting on tefillin, and he told him, if you would have asked me to put on tefillin in the beginning, I would have sent you flying with this whole project. I didn't want to hear from you. I wouldn't then want to hear from you. I needed to allow the information to come in. I wanted to take it objectively. You see, there's really a contradiction in logic, in how the mind works. Sometimes we say be objective, which means to say there's a gap between the mind and the heart. And sometimes we say, if you understand it, then you should do it. What's the reality? How does it work? Be objective means to say, I can understand it one way and I can do something else. And when we say, and usually say, no, if you understand it, then why don't you do it? Then you should get it. The answer is, if you allow it to happen, if you get something and you allow it to come down, it'll go down. Be objective means make a decision to separate it. If you make that decision, you'll separate yourself. It's a decision we make. In Chassidus terms, Ratzain, the decisions we make, a shoylet controls everything else. If you make a decision, I don't want this, and we make that decision all the time. Subconsciously, we make certain decisions in our head. I don't want that. I'm allergic to that. I created a self-made allergic reaction within my head to certain things, and therefore, anytime I hear something, it's repulsive to me, not because it doesn't make sense, because I decided it doesn't make sense. That's key in challenges. In a student getting the teacher, the first key is, who said trust? Trusting the teacher, allowing yourself to trust the teacher is the hardest thing for the student. The student has already decided, the teacher, he's from the teacher guys, he doesn't really get me. Who said? Maybe he gets you. Maybe he knows you very well. Maybe he has your interest. Maybe he wants to actually make life better for you. Maybe he actually loves you. You decided he's a different kind of guy. He's an adult kind of person. He doesn't get me. Now he's not going to, now Taki, he won't get you. If you decided that way, he won't get you. There's an example brought down, I bring this many times. A Talmid Chacham, we spoke about this. You have to be a Talmid to be a Chacham. There has to be a willingness to accept to make it happen. And that's the first area of the student. The first area of the student is to be a student. The student who didn't get the apples, you know why they didn't get it? They didn't want to get it. Leave me alone. I'm very happy with the apples. Oh, that was a shiny apple. It's so nice of you to show me shiny apples. Green apples, red apples, bananas. I love them. They taste. Doesn't want to see more. The moment you want to see more is the moment you'll see more. Certain students don't want, and that's okay. But they don't want. So that's the first point. And examples in life can give other examples too. There's an example of, 2 other examples brought down is mincha. Mincha in business is the hardest davening. Not Shabbos and not Ma'ariv, because Mincha is the middle of the day. And usually there are meetings scheduled, there are things going on. To pull yourself away and do something else, you have to make sure it's part of the business day. But I thought business is a different world than us. So you have to make that calculation in your head. It's not a different world, it's part of the same world. Shabbos closing, we gave an example once, B&H is a great example. Anytime you speak to someone who understands the business, B&H is a great example how you can have retail. Oh, I thought Shabbos, there are certain ways how business is wired. And it can't. No, there's no conflicting mindset. There's no conflicting reality, it's a conflicting mindset. There's no conflicting reality. It's my mindset that I decided I can't because that's how business, no. Business doesn't dictate anything to you. You dictate the business. Today, you see this very much. You know where you see this? Any of the huge companies that are successful are what they call behavior-changing businesses. Uber is a behavior-changing business. It's a car. No, it's a taxi. Oh, taxi, car, taxi. Make up your mind. Cars will become taxis, and now everything else is going to go to the wayside. Why? Because they don't accept the accepted behavior patterns. Because there are no accepted behavior patterns. Well, so why is Shabbos different?
That's very problematic.
Not to accept it. Why is it problem?
For Uber, it's not, but for people, you want to have some kind of accountability or something.
What I'm saying is there are no accepted behavior patterns in success. Someone is going to say the only way I can be successful is by ABC, and that doesn't match what the Torah is telling me. It's not true. Logically, put aside spiritually. Logically, it's not true. We have to understand this logically.
Banks used to close at 3
Uber is a great example. Waze is a great example. Any areas in technology prove to you that there are no accepted behavior patterns. As a matter of fact, everyone is looking to change every behavior pattern.
Well, I find that problematic.
What's problematic? Why is it problematic? It's actually very inspiring, because what it does is it tells you that all the areas where we feel as a Jew, I mean, I don't have to go into the specifics. Okay, we'll go through it afterwards. So that's what we have over here. That's in the second part. What do we have over here? Yeah.
What do you mean, say successful behavior changing business? What do you mean the thing about Uber? What do you mean a behavior changing? I don't know.
Behavior changing businesses are businesses that change the way people see things. Those are the most successful. Uber,
B&H decided that.
Apple.
Nothing to do with Shabbos. Yeah.
Apple did that. Digital pictures. Instead of Kodak, they put Kodak into bankruptcy. Think about what happened.
What does Uber do?
Uber took a car into a taxi, and now all the taxis are out of business. I mean, they're having a tough time.
But the cars don't have a license, do they?
I'm not going into specifics. I'm bringing out the general idea behind it is when I come across a moment that and my accountant tells me if I'm going to not cheat, I'm not going to make money. If I'm not going to open on Shabbos, I'm not going to make money. I turn around to him and I say, Mr. Accountant, there are no set in stone ways to make money.
I get it.
And that is the lesson, simply logically, to understand. There is no such thing as set in stone. Logically, it's not true.
You decide your business, not it decides you.
But Torah tells me to close on Shabbos.
Right.
I logically could understand that it's, and B&H proved that.
Right.
Other companies, but I'm just bringing out logically. I'm not a business consultant. I'm just bringing it as an example from business to the area of Torah as well. When a person comes along and says, you know, I meet Indians and they have like a red thing on their nose or on their head over here, forehead, right? And they're proud. They're proud. And I mean, and then, why shouldn't I be proud of my yarmulke? It's in my mind. It's not a reality. Well, and he's also making the same money. So why did the other guy tell me if I'm going to wear a yarmulke, I'm not going to make money? You're embarrassed. So look in the mirror. It's nothing to do with reality. What I'm saying is not reality. If I'm going to dress that way, it's not true. It's not true.
No, but.
It's just not true.
His mind's got shaped by all this persecution, it's understandable, and it's true.
Okay, you want Malamed Schus, you can Malamed Schus, but in today's world, with business, it's a different
No, but
world.
what she said is right, like for example, in France, they were telling you not to wear yarmulke.
I'm not
It's
going.
safe for you. So
Okay, I'm not referring to that. Talking
Then
about.
they came out even stronger, all the politicians.
the politicians are.
Okay, I'm not going into politics. I'm not going to security and whatever.
It's in
Maybe.
record.
Someone here in Manhattan. In Manhattan, you don't have to go too far. In Manhattan, New York City. That's what I'm afraid. Okay, so that's the second part up here. The area we're talking about up here is the second area, is the big world. Now we're up to 8 or 9. In the big world. In the big world, you have examples in life. You have wealth, B&H, you have yarmulke, mincha, mirma. There's a story of the Rebbe also with happiness. I gave that example because it's more part of. There's a bacher who wanted to. I gave the example also that I was once asked. I walked into the office, and the lawyer tells me, he says, you know, Rabbi, if you would, there's another rabbi that came here and he didn't have a beard. You know, I think you look a lot better if you come in his office without a beard. You know, it'd be a lot. You know, this office specifically, it'd be a lot. So I said to him, I hear you. But tell me, how did Moses look? Moses had long white beard. So I said to him, I would like to look like Moses. So he said, okay, Rabbi, no problem. You can be like Moses. I got it. No problem. You want to be like Moses? You can be like Moses, right? His band leader that had a beard, he never told him to change. And his band leader that had a kuku going down and earrings, he had no problem with. The rabbi, he wanted to tell the rabbi what to do. Why? Because he doesn't know what a rabbi is. Once he was identified, a rabbi as Moses, oh, I got it. The rabbi also has their own identity. I got it. The Indian has their own identity. I got it. So is it a reality? I could have been intimidated. Yeah, you're right. You know what? Maybe. No, I don't. I want to be like Moses. That's what I want to be.
Where was it?
The lawyer. It was in Manhattan. An office. It was. It's not where it was.
No, I want to know more or less.
So the idea behind it is, it's not what you have, but how you feel about it, and how you look at it, and how you identify it. The way you identify it is the way you feel it. The way I identify myself is the way others will perceive me. There's a nice line that Jonathan Sachs once said, though it's common sense. Yeah, he says, non-Jews respect Jews who respect themselves. Non-Jews don't respect Jews who don't respect themselves. It has nothing to do with the non-Jew, but it has to do with the Jew. It has nothing to do with the reality. It has to do with the perception of myself, to myself. That mirrors out in the reality that I see, which is not a reality, it's my perception. That is the first area of keli. When you're saying chassidus keli, making a keli really is essentially identifying myself. The first area of a keli means simply identifying myself. It's not a jungle where everybody can just do it. There's a purpose. There's an identity. Identify your identity, and then you see yourself differently. That's the first point that I wanted to bring around. It also has to do with health.
Identity as a yid or identity as your own?
So here I'm even going to, well, obviously I'm referring to a yid, but I'm taking it logically, without taking it spiritually. Simply talk to your logic. You know, there's a reason why we have Abishta created us as a human, with the head and our shoulders. Embarrassment means my head is not there. I'm lost. I don't really get it. Pride is when my head is there. I got it. I like it. It's important to me, and that's why I'm proud. Proud is a consequence of conviction. I like it. And that's why I'm proud of it. Embarrassment is a consequence that I don't get it, and therefore I'm embarrassed. And therefore I'm saying it's the other person, but really it's myself. In politics, it's right and left, but it's the same idea, right? It's two ideas. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think that's clear. So now there's an example brought down with a donkey. I'll give the example of the donkey, so we have that too. An idea of challenges. So there's a famous story with a donkey. I don't know if you heard it before or not, but I'll bring it.
What number is that? The donkey?
Number 11. There's a story with a donkey who fell in a pit. And the donkey falls into a pit. Again, perception. Donkey falls into a pit, and the donkey feels like that's it, it's all lost. Nishnar dust, but the villagers outside start throwing dirt into the pit to bury the donkey. So the donkey feels like not only is he stuck in a pit, but they're going to bury him. Slowly realizes this is a mount of earth that was collected on the side. Steps on the mountain, gets out of the pit. The things that are there to bury us, are many times there to uplift us. Things that are there to bury us, are many times there to how you see it. It's not easy, but it is a mind thing. In business, they say the successful businessmen take opportunities out of challenges. There's a story that I heard in a business in Europe. They were selling shoes, luxury shoes. And China came along and copied them and produced it mass market for a fraction of the price. They were mamish going to go bankrupt. What does a smart businessman do when they hit a challenge? They rethink the business model. They went back to the boardroom and they thought of a new business model of what? Instead of selling shoes, they're going to go into luxury retailers and offer customized shoes. And they did that and became more successful than they were before. So sometimes things that are there to bury us can actually be there to uplift us in life. Simply in life. It's really, many times, it's those frustrating moments, those questions that turn ourselves into something else that we actually look back and we say, wow. You know, I mentioned the Friedrich Rebbe said when he came out of jail that he wouldn't sell it for $1 million. It didn't say $1 million, whatever. He didn't sell for any money in the world, whatever it is. But he would never go back there. It's important to note, challenges are customized to each individual based on what they can take. Essentially, we have a private teacher. We have a tutor. And that tutor is giving us the specific things that we need in order to help us and not someone else, turn ourselves into a better self. So if it's purpose and not jungle, if it's idea and not apples, if there's something deeper there that I can just be a student and take and allow that to happen, that I've used to say many times, if there's an Isai, and if you would just see the purpose of it, the whole Isai would go away. What does it mean? It's high words. What does it mean? Essentially what that means is those moments of frustration are moments where I can reckon and shed an old soul. You can't shed something unless it hurts. Teething, hurting until... So it hurts. Hurting is growth. Hurting is not hurting you as in against you, as in your enemy. Hurting can just be a consequence of growing into something new. But if you don't allow the new tooth to come in, you shove it back in, it's going to hurt for a longer time. So sometimes you have to stand back. Okay, can look at that, hurt you. Okay, next part.
Do
So that's-
we naturally learn a lesson, or is
Mm-mm.
it active?
Sometimes
We
we
don't
have to
actually.
be the last house on the block.
Active?
It's active.
Like, we don't get it till.
What?
If it's active, I don't see how you surrender. If it's
We have to ask ourselves. Look, take the challenge of the business. They could have declared bankruptcy. Maybe this business is not meant for me. Things that come your way are meant to be your way. That's the key. Things that come my way, the Lashon HaKodesh, the Lashon is the birurim that come your way. The encounters you have are your personalized, customized encounters that somehow help you. Someone came into your life, something came into your life, think twice before you reject it. It's meant for you to do something with it. Find how positive you can interact with it. But if it came to your life,
and let's say like a person doesn't do something with it, it will still serve its purpose. Like a challenge still serves its purpose or not? If what?
So the-
The person doesn't tune in. So what's the message? They don't understand it.
You never said like,
The-
like sometimes I said, God, I got it, I get the hint. Like, I got it, at least she's not even.
But like, what if you really don't get the hint and you don't understand the message? You might
Right.
not
Most
get
people
another
don't get another bit.
Yeah, most people don't. What if you don't get
Well, then you're gonna keep getting hit.
Yeah, you know.
Because, no.
No, I'm saying,
And
give
then
me something
must
that you're gonna
start-
You're
understand.
talking about somebody who gets hit, but what about somebody's
I don't like the word hit.
life circumstance they're born with? Sometimes.
What are you referring? What are you referring to born with?
I don't know, people are born with all kinds of challenges. Is that, you must say that it's like, that's their.
What do you mean by people are born? Give me an example.
I don't know, let's say they're born with their.
Physical?
Disability.
Physical disability?
It could be that, it could be
Or
something.
born
Or what's with something else?
spiritual, It could be something.
Born in
Well,
a,
You know-
born
you
in
know-
abusive
You know what? I find fascinating. You ever saw when the Rebbe met with Chayalei Tzahal that were
Oh,
injured?
they're handicapped.
So yeah, first of all, he calls them. Now let's just take this apart. You talk about physical disabilities. We'll take this apart. First of all, the Gashmias, we see that anybody who, let's not go extreme, but any physical disability comes with a super ability. The Gashmias. Let's take it slow. Any area of physical disability comes with a super ability. Person doesn't see has an extra chush in something else. So you can look at that person as disability, and you should, in the sense of having rahmanis and help. But that person, how they should look at themselves, is super ability. Let's not make it extreme. Person who's not so smart can be very something else. Person who's not so doesn't have perseverance can have something else, right? Let's not go. But Gashmis too, in hearing and seeing. So really, there's a purpose. There's something super in every individual that's found, no matter how you slice the dice. Put that aside. You find also people, there's examples of people that had one arm cut off, and they were able to do amazing things.
But nobody
There's
wants
a
that,
there's a
that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm-
So what is
I'm-
Hashem thinking?
there's two
You say
people.
everyone is challenged in order to grow, so why does one person get like that and another person?
There's two people I can talk to when we discuss this. There's the person who it happened to, and there's others around it. when we encounter something that inhibits us, how do we see ourselves? If chas v'shalom, one, super. That's the answer. That's how a person, begashmius, we do that. This is not religion. This is begashmius that way. It happens to be, the Rebbe used to use that lashon, mitzuyoni tzahal. He would use not just for marketing purposes, but because there was a mindset behind it of what. But I'm not going to physical. It's harder to see it. People around have to help. It's like the usher is going to say, "Oh, you were meant to be an ani, so I'm not going to give you money. You were born that way, so go talk to God. Maybe I was born to help. I'm around. I am born to help. But the person himself, the way we view ourselves, should never be victim. Victim mentality is not something begashmius or anything that we have. Because victim mentality means that I am in a jungle. Things just happen. There's a purpose, there's a design, there's something meant for me. So if something happens to me,
If a person is doing it a certain way, it's gonna keep them from the
But that's what I'm asking.
I'm not going into what the purpose of every individual is, because I don't know. I know what the purpose is in the Shalom. Everybody has something.
I interrupted her, she was saying, what if you don't get the hint? And she's
I'm
asking-
saying, what if you really just try your best to understand the message and you really, really don't? And you've been trying for a while and you just don't understand the message behind, or what Hashem's trying to teach you. It's like completely lost.
There's a story. The story heard recently. A story I heard recently of a shliach who used to visit. I'll tell you a story. Let me see if this is going to help. I mentioned it in the 14. He used to visit an individual, and the individual suddenly started coming to shiurim, putting on tefillin. He saw there's something going on up here. So the individual says, "Look, the bank is looking to foreclose on my house. My business, I invested money, and I put a lien in the house, and so I decided I'm going to start putting on tefillin, but I'm making a deal with God. You better make this work." Okay. When's the court case? Whatever, the decision. This and this time. Okay. He's waiting. Calls him in that day. "Rabbi, where are you? I got to come to your office." Comes to his office, brings his tefillin with him. He says, "Rabbi, can you take back your tefillin? It didn't work out. The bank foreclosed. See ya. Shalom." So the rabbi tells him, "I'll keep the tefillin on the table here. Whenever you want to come back, you can come back." 6 months pass by. He calls him back. He says, "I'd like to have this phone back.
You what?
I'd like to have this phone back."
Oh.
He says, "What happened?" So he comes to the office. And he says, "Aren't you wondering what happened?" So he says, "You want to tell me? Tell me." So he says, "I'll tell you what happened. The bank foreclosed, but they couldn't sell it. No one was going to buy it. After 6 months, they offered me to buy it back for less than I bought it. For less than I owed. So I see that I ended up getting a good package, although I didn't foresee it in the beginning." Perseverance, by definition, is a moment where we don't understand. Perseverance is a moment we don't get it. Frustration is a moment we don't get. Rotting is a moment we feel zero. No one ever takes away the validation of frustration. It's frustrating. Frustration is frustration. You can't take away from frustration. It's frustrating. But we still have to know not to leave his phone on the table.
Not to leave,
Not to leave his phone on the table.
not
We have,
to,
Keep using them.
not to drop it off. I'm saying whatever.
Oh.
That's it. Not,
okay.
you have to go through such a
Right.
yeah. You come back for it, but
Not to
hopefully you
leave it
don't
on
have.
the table.
You keep it.
Right.
Things will. There's perseverance. Moments of nisyonos are moments of nisyonos. It is what it is. Take the best you can out of it, but no one's going to take away from the moment of nisyon. No one can turn a nisyon into happy. It will eventually. What you will find is number 13. And three things that I like to say in nisyon. Number one, it's important to know that it's unique. The fact that I know a nisyon is meant for me helps me with my burden. It's not random. You see, in a jungle, things are random. So it's very frustrating because it happened randomly. But the moment I recognize things happen with a purpose, and that's a realization, and that takes time to penetrate, that in itself alleviates some of the pain. The second thing you can do is you can have clarity many times when you look at someone else and you, in conviction this is, everybody looks at someone else, I'm so more confident than this, than that. When you contrast something, sometimes it helps to see that there is areas that I was able to pull through other areas. Some things I see clearer than others. Past experiences, whatever it may be, also help us deal. You're able to deal with one area by looking back at something else. But in the end of the day, nothing will take away from a moment of frustration. Nothing. It's frustrating what you can take away. When the Sayin doesn't become happy, and the Sayin isn't a Sayin.
Not only that, but sometimes it can be heartbroken. Something can break your heart. I mean, it's like, it's in the Sayin, it's supposed to uplift. But leider, there are, situations where it doesn't always, maybe at the end of a long time you say you get the aha moment, I don't know, but in the process, not only do you not get the hint, but you can
But
I wanna ask
wasn't he
one
saying
question.
that part of that whole growth process is to have that Zerbrochenkeit?
So one thing, I don't like the words Brochenkeit and pain. These are bad words. The better word to use is when things happen, how open am I to see something? No, really, in business you see this all the time. Some people simply see the opportunity. Some people, when the crash happened, wow, I can now invest. Real savvy businessmen are the ones that see in every crash where they can come in and be a shark. There's a lot here in perception. Don't take away from perception. We're used to victimizing ourselves. There's a lot here. I'm not taking away from pain, but I do want to emphasize there's a lot here in perception. There's a lot in, you say, I did what I can. What does it mean I did what I can? There are many things in my mind that I've simply said I can't and never went back there and said maybe I could. There are many decisions I make subconsciously and consciously. And there are many decisions that are so, and then suddenly one day I say, oh, if I would have, maybe that. People decide, I'm not willing to let go of this, I'm not willing to let go of this, and then they say, oh, it's not working out. Well, maybe you shouldn't have decided those two things. Maybe that's the area where you can make a decision in your terms, in your mind. Why did you decide that person's not good for you? Because you decided in your head you don't want A, B, and C. And that's set in stone, nothing to talk about. Over there I can talk about it. It's meant, why? Maybe it's that. You know what I'm saying? That is a big area that it's not in my hands. Why is it not in my hands? A lot of things in my hands. In areas, I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about encounters, bani chayim zoyne. When we're looking for livelihood, when we're looking for other areas, right? So there's something that I set myself in stone. Why? I'm not willing to why?
Don't want to let go.
So many times it's me. I'm not willing. Why are you not willing? Why? What's behind that not willing? Because I already decided. What's behind that decision?
Something that'll make you uncomfortable.
What's uncomfortable? Did I really make a calculated decision? Yeah. And what's behind that decision? Maybe I should be open to something else. Maybe not. What?
What is discomfort or not a good feeling or something like?
Comfort is never a reason for a decision. We do many things that are not comfortable. No, really. It's not comfortable to invest money. You're losing money. The question is how you look at it. Comfort is, by the way, all in the mind. I saw a guy jogging in the morning, 7 o'clock, he's schwitzing buckets. And he was very comfortable. He was very happy. No, he was. He was very happy. I was sitting on the couch and he was happier than I was. I promise you, he was. He was very happy. He was smiling. He was with music. He was like after Chasna, in the sky. Very happy. He was schwitzing buckets. I was going to go out with a towel and help him, maybe give him a shot. I don't know. Shroud was chasing him. I don't know. He was very happy. So comfortable is on the mind. And I saw another guy lousy on the couch, and he was going to have a heart attack because he was on the couch a whole day and he didn't do anything the whole day. Comfortable is something in the mind. It's a lot more in the mind than anything else. We're made to do things. We're not made to sit on the couch.
What is an environment? I'm saying that
environment, in the whole idea, I said this many times, environment is what I choose. There's no such thing as an environment dictating my life.
No, but what if you live in a certain community and this is the rule?
The crash, 2008, I saw this. I went into an office, everybody's down and everybody's upset. The whole community is and this guy's excited. I'm telling you, I'm going to make money now. I'm going to get everybody now doesn't want, that's the time to buy. So is the environment affecting him? No, because he's a savvy businessman. Savvy businessmen don't look at environments. They decide that they're environments. Savvy people don't get affected. They choose where they want to be. Many times, we're simply not allowing ourselves to choose. There's no such thing as an environment effect. I once brought out the example of I don't know if you remember, it's a contradiction. It says Tov l'tzadik v'tov l'shchein. That means to say if I'm going to be next to a tzaddik, I'm automatically going to be affected by a tzaddik. If I'm going to be next to a Rasha, so what happens if I have two neighbors? A tzaddik and a Rasha. I'm going to be sandwiched between the two. So what happened? I'm going to be a Bainani? What am I going to do exactly with myself? If influence is automatic, then what's going to happen? And the answer is, if I choose to be the tzaddik's neighbor, I will be influenced by him. I can have a neighbor and consciously block them out. We do that all the time. We do that all the time. They're my neighbor? I never knew you lived there. Been living in your block for 5 years. Never knew. And this guy just moved and I already know everything about him. We do that all the time. It's a conscious decision. Community, influence, surrounding are all nice fancy words to camouflage decisions. It's decisions we make.
Can you give an example, like why people make certain decisions or have beliefs? Like, what's an example of why?
Person.
Uncomfortable feelings, no?
What?
Having that experience and uncomfortable feelings are really the basis of like those stubborn, like a stubborn.
What does it mean, uncomfortable feelings? A person can be next to a.
Like, where do like beliefs come? If they're not based on Torah, where do they like come from? I don't know.
I think it comes from fear of like fear of facing the pain, fear of just like you're gonna wilt. There's nothing gonna be
Right,
left.
so what if the community?
Let's finish off. Where we are? How much time do we have? Okay, let's finish off. The confidence, I think, is a lot of it. The decisiveness. Many times we don't want to make a decision. We'd be happy to go with the flow.
What if
We don't. To make a decision means I have to think about it. That means I have to think, be sure, feel for it, and decide that I'm going to do it. To be passive is what fish do, dead fish. But yeah, I mean, there's no real reason. Influence is something that person lives in a place and everybody does one thing. So it's subconscious. Just go with the flow. Go with the flow.
No, but what if?
But going with the flow doesn't get you anywhere. What?
No, what if the first thing, you go against what the community does?
It's not about community. It's about if you feel for something, we all go against the flow. The question is where. We all go against the flow. Every single individual goes against the flow somewhere. Otherwise, they're mamish dead. Everybody goes against the flow. Every single person goes against the flow. Am I right?
Yes.
Oh, that was too quick.
Are you talking Bechlal?
Every single person goes against the flow. The question is where. I might put on a different shoes than my friend. I might choose to wear something different. I might choose to say something different. I might choose not to engage with certain people certain times. I might choose not to go somewhere a certain time. I could be a million ways. People are not machines. We go it. The question is where I choose to go against the flow. But we go against the flow. It's not something that it's so foreign to us. To have guts to develop going against the flow in bigger areas, you have to feel for it. Why does this businessman, invest when everybody's not? Because he knows where to invest, and he understands the market, and he played the market, and he saw last crash, and he saw what happened, and so he's waiting for the next crash. That's what he's doing. He's on the side, he's waiting for the next crash. No, this is what happens. This is how things work, right? So it's not a question of can we, it's a question of if we want to. That's really what it is. It doesn't answer but it's an empowerment, not to play victim. It takes away a lot of the problems. So let's finish off of here. So what do we have? So we discussed We discussed number one again. Let's sum this up and wrap it. We started off with the question of realities, conflicting realities. We're up to now 14, but I'm going to recap so like this we can continue the flow. We started off with conflicting realities, and we discussed how we have this reality, and it's a different world. It's like the weather, it's like the child, and the math, touch and feel versus logic. We're different worlds. I can't get it. Now suddenly we realize it's not different worlds. It's not different realities. It's different perceptions. It's really in my mind. A lot of it is in my mind. The child sitting in front of the teacher who thinks the teacher's in a different world is because he's playing with toys and he's probably immature. He's not at the stage where he can sense maturity. He can sense something else. But really, if we want to, we could, but the bridge is the frustration. The question the child asks is that moment where they can let go and see something else in their world, not out of their world. Is what we say. Hashem made us in a way that we can see things different. Nature of the bigger world, nature of our world. We discussed how this plays out in life. Businessmen in life, you can see this in challenges, how each one sees something different in a challenge. We discuss it in happiness. We discuss it in many ways, how you find how moments of frustration are really part of life. But not there to declare bankruptcy, it's there to open a new model. It's there to re-see something differently, because in order to shed the old, you have to have a moment where the old goes away, and that's called the growth, pain of growth. That's what it really is. It's not pain, it's growth. This leads us to there's a story of Rav Mendel. This is a difficult thing, perhaps, but it's a beautiful thing of life, because it allows a person to be happy. When you go through tough experiences, so many times we have grudges. Yeah, it's all very nice. I learned from it, but that person did make me go through a tough time. There was a story with Rav Mendel in Russia. And yeah. And in Russia, there were Lubavitchers who were Muslim. Muslim means to say people who tattletale to the government on the activities of Chabad in Russia. Now, the Lubavitchers who were Muslim didn't do it by choice. They were tortured. They were tortured until they had to also cooperate with the government. And unfortunately, there were Lubavitchers who ended up being controlled by the government, and they were tattletalers. So there was this one family of Lubavitcher family who left Russia finally, but they were known in the Lubavitch community as Muslim tattletalers. It's not just tattletalers. I mean, because of them, people stayed in Russia. Informers. Because of them, people ended up still staying in Russia. And the Mendel met with him, with this Lubavitcher. These are Lubavitchers that live in our community. But back then, when they came to America, so the Rebbe had Yechidus, and the Rebbe told all the Lubavitchers that what happened in the past, until I go, look. So the Mendel met with this Lubavitcher. And the Lubavitchers then were very upset. How can you meet with him? And they officially, the shmua was that Mendel told them, when you go back, you have to do kapara. You have to do different mitzvahs, so different things to make up for what you caused, Lubavitchers in Russia. Again, people stayed in Russia, people couldn't get out because of this guy's activities. So Lubavitchers were very upset. How can you even meet with this guy? Look what he did because of him. I'm stuck here, my kids are stuck here. So he told them, I heard this from someone whose father was the one that spoke to Mendel. So he told them, look, as Chassidim we have to learn from Yosef and his brothers. Yosef and his brothers, in the end of the day, there was a purpose. People are intermediate. It happened to come through this person. I was meant to stay here. China took my product. That was meant. If I'm going to see the guy from China, I'm going to smile. Haha, I made more money because of you, because I ended up changing my business model. It's easy to say when it's China. It's hard to say when you're stuck in Russia and your kids are suffering. So the guy told her, Mendel, it's easy for you to say, because your kids and your wife is in England, and my kids are here. So, for you to say that is easy, but for me, I have, So Mendel told him, number one.
This was in Russia?
Yeah.
Conversation in Russia.
Yeah, conversation. So Mendel told him, number one, I wouldn't tell this to you if I didn't feel that way. And number two, if you don't feel that way, you simply won't live a peaceful life.
Okay, true.
To have a peaceful life, you better develop that kind of mindset. What's behind this? What I'm trying to say is, there's if we really think into life, sometimes letting go of the past is letting go, not keeping it. The ability to let go is a beautiful thing that we have in nature. Just remember, when you keep on holding on to something, it's a decision you made. Letting go is something we have in our nature that can simply give you a blissful life. It's Pashat Bracha the Eibishter gave us, to let go. Bechira, Ratzon, you can let go. Let go, leave it alone, it happened, let go, go on, and you'll see yourself will feel better. We're meant to let go of certain things. We're not meant to hold on to things and recreating them over and over and over and hurting ourselves. The Eibishter hurt me, quote unquote. But I don't want to hurt myself again. He made it so this, but now that it happened, let me let go. It's easier said than done, but it's important to know. It's important to know that grudges is essentially a decision I make to recreate a challenge. And that's a very, very, once you realize that, it's easier to let go of it.
No, but also I just experienced something like there was a mindset that I had, and all of a sudden when I finally, with the help of a Hasidic Rabbeinu, I was able to change my perception. It was like I call it open heart surgery, like you just cut out that nefesh habahamas. I felt liberated. I was like,
There's a,
well, it took a
It's only as strong as you
conversation
make
around
it.
the table.
it's only as strong as you make it.
So basically you're saying.
If you make yourself victim, then it's never going to happen.
No, it's according to challenge
But-
person.
But let me just finish with the last story. So the last story I want to bring out is, it's a story, and I mentioned this also, but it has it finishes this. At the end of the day, when a person finishes all the challenges, right? They don't create anything new. You discover your own self. And the story is like the story on the Gem, a video over there with the person who was I think what is it called? The story with the guy who saw the Rebbe. He was involved in some music, some kind of band, and he comes to the Rebbe and he, what's the name of that video? I mentioned it a few times ago. Okay, so he comes to the Rebbe.
that band, that
Yeah, what's the name of the video?
about God.
Something about,
he's
yeah.
Looking,
It's
the rock band, the
So
what's that famous
So anyway,
band?
so he comes by the Rebbe, and he used to be from, and he became not from. No, a different guy. This was back in the day, and he comes by the Rebbe, and he says over in the video, he says over his experience. Lasky. He says over, he comes by, but it's a beautiful story because it goes in phases. And he comes by the Rebbe, and he asks the Rebbe. He says, "Wo is Gott? Where is the Eibishter?" He says in Yiddish. So the Rebbe says, "In out, in everything." So he asks again. He says, "Ich weiß, aber wo ist er? Where is he?" Yeah. But you see over here a challenge playing out. So the Rebbe says, so yes, ich weiß, aber wo ist er? So the Rebbe says, in out, in a stain, in a beam, in a stone, in a tree. So he says, the Rebbe, he says again, ich weiß, but
where is?
aber wo ist er? So the Rebbe says, aber sie fragst du in dein Herz. That's the way you're asking in your heart. So then he asks the Rebbe, can I speak in English? At this point, he wanted to speak in English. Tells the Rebbe, if the essence of an Indian is God, the Eibishter, and the essence of another person's the Eibishter, and a Jew is the Eibishter, what's the difference between a Jew, an Indian, and another example? The Rebbe answered him, the essence of an Indian is an Indian. The essence of a whatever, a black guy is a black guy. The essence of a Jew is the Eibishter. And you can connect to him through Torah mitzvahs. He says he had another whole conversation of 10-15 minutes. And the Rebbe suggested he put on tefillin, which he said he didn't, for another few months until he put on tefillin. Why do I like this story? There's a few parts of the story that captive. First of all, you see how he goes through the whole story, he crying. But watch how he's asking. And every time he asks, he gets another answer. Every time you ask, you have to ask. There's another answer, another layer peeling through. And he gets one answer in everything. He's not happy. He's asking. A challenge is asking. He's frustrated. It's a real frustration. He asks again in a shtein. He's still there's layers being. Finally, you see he breaks up crying. He breaks up crying in the middle. As he's recounting this. And then when the Rebbe finally gives him a satisfactory answer, it took him a few months to change. Changes don't happen overnight. Realizations don't happen overnight. Even Matan Torah, even you seeing in front, you have a moment of you would think the next morning. It doesn't work that way. But he peels away. What do you find in the end? You find yourself. You don't find anything else. If you allow it, he was genuinely asking, like the guy with Glitzenstein. When you genuinely ask and you genuinely plow through, you eventually come to your own self. And Munah is the identity. I gave the example back in the beginning when we started. The example of a Munah is an artist. Why did I give the example of an artist, if you remember? Because an artist is something that's simply within you. No matter how much someone can fadre you a cup, that you don't have that gift, you're going to always crave it. Because it's within us. So the challenges we have are simply frustrations that are not allowing us to be ourselves. In Inyoni Torah mitzvahs. The moment we recognize that, the moment the person realizes who they really are, and there's a purpose, helps us to allow ourselves to be better selves, who we really are, rather than something we're not.
Better step to me by improving your meters.
It's allowing you to be who you really are. Torah mitzvahs, the difference between Torah mitzvahs and anything else is simply allowing you, it's like the artist, allowing the artist to actually draw. He was frustrated. He was convinced by that. We talked about that back in the class of Emunah. And that's the same idea over here. The difference between a jungle and an idea. The world is an idea. The world is a jungle. The world is an idea means everything has a purpose. I have a purpose. The world has a purpose. Things that happen to me are not by chance. They're designed. If I sit there as a student and if I plow away through my questions and allow myself to come to something else, then I can come to something else. But let's not play victim. Playing victim is the opposite of everything Chassidus tells us. Avodah is playing empowerment. Avodah is ratzon, bchira. We have a bchira. We have the ability to decide things. And in the life today that we learn, Begashmis, you see, success is through behavior changes. Why did I quote that? Because that's simply the same idea of avodah in Chassidus. Changing accepted norms became today accepted. It's a beautiful thing. Used to be accepted norms. Today, the most successful people are the ones that challenge the norms. Essentially, that's what Chassidus tells us. Hanachas Olam, accepted norms are not accepted. And today, even the biggest businessmen understand that. Even the world, the logic of the world understands it. Finish with that. We shouldn't have any challenges. We shouldn't have any frustrating moments. But the reality is we do have them. And the reality is the question is how we deal with them. And the reality is that we don't always see the end of the tunnel. But at least we know there's a tunnel. At least we see there's something coming in the end. And at least there's something that we could peel. And something we didn't peel until now that we could peel. And eventually something comes out of it.
Sometimes it takes years and you can see.
And sometimes a moment of focus that I never thought of. You know? That I never thought of. Come to think of that, why didn't I think of that a long time ago? That's something a moment of focus can take a lot more than years. Because years means passive. Active could be a moment. There are moments of focus that a person can accomplish a lot more than anything else.
I just want to tell you about the Ani, we said that the rich man, like Zayden, Meisha, Shatzki, used to say that everything you learn, everything you see, you learn something. But what do you learn from the Hashem just says, everything you hear and you see, what do you learn from the Apikairis? Apikairis denies God.
Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah, sure. Apikairis denies God. So what do you learn from somebody who denies God? So he said that you go to the rich man and ask him to help a poor man. The rich man says, God will help you. God will help you. If the rich man said, no, there's no God, you're God, you help.
Right.
And that verse.
Very good.
Huh?
Very good.
So what?
Very good. Same idea. Yeah, very good.
That's
My
we learn.
grandfather,
Oh, that's what
Meisha
you.
B'Shetz, would say that story that we learn everything, even from Apikairis.
Rich man is saying God should help you. He's taking away.
It says like in Ecclesiastes, there's a time or place for everything. There's even a time to be an apple.
Right.
When someone asks you for help, you actually could help them when you say, oh, God will help you.
Right.
That's when you,
And the
that's
retort
how
was.
God wants you to be God. Yeah,
Yeah.
And the retort is, no, there's no God.
No.
Now you're God, you
Yeah,
will.
now you're dead.
So
I
the
wanna
other
ask you,
twisted the other way around.
You're assuming when the Rebbe told the guys in Russia, you'll never have peace unless you forget the past, and there's a reason why things happen, why that family maybe had this very much. Can we assume that we're supposed to have peace? Our lives we're supposed to feel peace in our life.
No. What's your question?
I'm asking you a question. Can we assume?
Of course we're supposed to have.
Rebbe's response made me question.
Of course we're supposed to have a peaceful life.
Why are you saying of course?
And there's another story.
You're telling me of course we're supposed to have a peaceful life. Well, who said that?
When I say peace, the areas that are in my control to be peaceful,
No, of course that, but I'm just saying, say for a child that's been abused and, whatever, kids, whatever, everybody doesn't come from a father.
I want to say something. We tend, I'm going to defer a little bit from accepted psychology. The whole accepted psychology of victim, right? I think there's an approach like this too. I heard from people isn't that, but this is for sure, Chassidus doesn't approach it, doesn't accept that. The whole idea of victim, oh, he went through something, and you have to understand, and therefore forever and ever and ever, he's just not going to be normal.
Criminals because their father was.
And you should just know the reason why he killed someone is because he was killed and someone else killed his father and his mother, and it goes down to Oig Machabasha, and therefore everybody's going to be killed.
Right.
The whole thing is simply nonsense.
Right.
It's simply nonsense.
Right.
It's simply not allowing a human to be a human and putting them in the category of behemoths. Behemoths don't have free choice. The story with the Rambam and the cat. Right? We have the ability to let go. The Schwarz was running for president, let go of his past, and he was what's his name? What's that guy?
You teach a cat how to.
No, the guy who's running, Carson. He came from a very bad family, and he let go of his past, and he's a beautiful person. Yeah, I'm saying he let go of his past. He was mamish from nothing. People have the ability. Just because you come from, that doesn't mean you can't. Of course you could.
No,
Those people are degrading the minorities rather than helping them. They're exactly the opposite of what they want to do. So the whole idea of victimizing is not.
It wasn't actually, I agree with that. It just hit me. that we're
So
allowed
even
to
if something
believe
happened
that
to
we're-
me-
Like even like you said, like a challenge, it's like, thank God for this challenge, because now there's something I have to learn, I can grow. That's a complete, that's giving me peace. If I can say that, and I'm having some challenge, I'm feeling peaceful. So I guess it's just a switch would
The
be
end, right.
that you can be peaceful.
No, I'm not.
What?
But even letting go is very hard.
I'm not talking about, no, it is.
Somebody hurt you.
Yeah, Nisiyah, the Tzodas and Tzodas and Tzodas, right?
I think he's saying that.
Was he a?
Essentially, they're just a shliach from God.
But I think
No,
you can have peace, even if you're having challenges.
Maybe it's also.
So we're
It-
assuming that we can.
Tzodas is begashmius. Peace is a nefesh. No, peace means to say how I.
Could it be because he?
Isn't that what Hasidic joy is really that place of peace?
He didn't have any clothes.
Could it be because
He had
his
grudges?
son was really?
That's what I'm talking about. Grudges. He had grudges. Yosef had grudges. Look at Yosef. He had grudges. Yosef had a reason. That's what we're talking. I don't know what the word peace, but grudges.
Even when he met Asa, no, he did not.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. Grudges is something that I have the ability to let go of. Grudges, peace and grudges. Peace means that grudges, not means that things that are not in my control.
So you're saying that you have to let go of the grudge in order to grow, to continue to grow.
Grudges is something that I have the ability. Bitachon takes away grudges.
It's making you peaceful, but
I know,
more
that's
than
a-
that, it's letting you go on in your life in a more productive manner.
Not even more productive, but more. It lets you have more menucha. Grudge is the opposite of menucha. No? What's a grudge? A grudge is
Emotional energy expended
so
on something.
now I have more menucha. Now I have more.
Hold on, wait, it's denying.
Grudge is something that I do myself. What Abisha does to me.
She's saying you're not denying that the situation was.
Not denying, I'm saying denying that God,
God said
that was
he gave us.
something you were supposed to deal with. Denying God's, whatever happened in your life, that God's in control. whatever happens to us is on a higher level, is meant to.
You're not going to take away the frustration. When frustration happens, it's called frustration because it is frustration.